いなけりゃ泣くこともできない返せ返せ緑も青空も返せ Hello and welcome to another Drive-In Double Feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturepodcast. That's just a little area where you can find some fun games, us razzing each other's movie taste, just something fun between us friends that we're giving to you at patrons out there as a thank you for supporting us. So you can head on over there and get that extra content. If not, do not worry. It does not affect any regular content. Now, today, we're going back to Toho. We're continuing that long journey. We're kind of been beaten up from this last installment where we were just worn down by Nina and Gabara and
clips of old movies.
Clips of movies that we've already have seen and trying to sell us on it's a new movie. So we're back here, though, and don't worry, it is a completely different movie, and it is 1971 Godzilla versus Hedorah, or the American version, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, and that is directed by Yoshimitsu Banno.
Yeah, and I guess I read that this is his only directed movie.
It is, but he does have a lot of direct involvement with the Godzilla series, such as if you go to the 2014 Godzilla movie, the one with Bryan Cranston, he is listed as an executive producer.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, he basically was, we'll get into a lot later, but he is probably the person that got Godzilla back to America.
Gotcha.
So he kind of led into that sort of thing. But where we were last time, everyone's kind of fed up with Godzilla, to say the least. All the principal cast, all the creators are just like, enough Godzilla. My ideas have ran out.
Yeah.
So much so that Honda, who a long time had been working with Toho, said, I'm done, calling it quits. And said, I'm not officially a free agent. I'll work wherever. I'll be a freelancer from now on. So they were without a director, and they found the producer Tomoyuki Tanaka went and saw a movie, and it happened to be directed by Yoshimitsu Banno. And he's like, that guy is my director. And at this point, Eiji Tsuburaya, the effects wizard, had died. So pretty much they needed an entirely new team to create Godzilla. And there was a lot of issues going on at the time with pollution, because Banno, he is very much wanted to do something, was like the original Godzilla, where the Godzilla was tackling a hot button issue at the time. It was post World War II, nuclear warfare, horrific imagery, and this one is taking on pollution. Now, you may not have noticed that this movie is all about pollution and environmentalism. It's so very subtle.
Is it anti-pollution? I didn't really get that out of it. Weird. No, it's very knock you over the head environmentalism message.
It's very much like this movie is 100% telling you that pollution is bad, so much so that pollution is manifested into a monster called Hedorah.
Yeah, I will say one of the few things I did get to read about this was just how bad pollution was in Japan at the time. It actually seemed like really horrible. Like people were like dying from like diseases given out by pollution and smog.
Yeah, and again, my sources, Big Action Bill's video and David Callett's book. But at the time in Japan, they were dealing with all types of different diseases. There was one where this very poisonous gas had been emitted into the air from the coal mines, and people were having these excruciating pains in their muscles and joints. And So much so they called it dancing cat fever, because like, cats would get it and their just bodies would move involuntarily.
Horrible.
And just these very horrific things were happening. And another chemical plant had these poisonous emissions coming out, which leaked into the river supply, which killed wildlife, which people ate the wildlife or drank from the water, and ended up killing a bunch of people as well.
Good God. Yeah, horrible.
And this led to a bunch of ecological changes in Japan for the better, but just not to downplay how horrific this was. There are still effects of this still to this day, where family and people that live in that same area are still to this day dealing with these issues 50 years later.
Yeah, I can imagine that's horrible. And it is interesting that Godzilla would tackle this issue.
Yeah, and Godzilla, he's firmly in the hero role right now.
Yes, yeah,
he's the hero of the people, and I think they wanted a really big hot button issue, and at the time, I'll say this movie is also widely regarded as a not so favorite of the Godzilla series.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of knew that, but I really like this one. I really do. I had a lot of fun with this one.
Nathan, I don't know if I told you this, but
yeah, what?
This is my favorite Godzilla
This is
movie.
Your favorite? It's a good favorite. This one rocks.
Nathan, so you can't see, this is a visual gag, but I always record the podcast in the same room, which has various movie posters.
Is that one?
That's from Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Which
gotcha.
And just to give you a little clip, a visual clue is that it's the silhouette of Godzilla, and inside it is Smog, and it's Hedorah's red eyes that are right in the center of it. It's one of my favorite posters from my favorite Godzilla movies. This is my Godzilla movie. This one's mine. And it is, I cannot understate how much I love. I mean, I've seen this movie countless times. I owned it on VHS. I watched it a bunch. So like I said, this was not my first Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
I mentioned which one, King Kong versus Godzilla was my first one. Now getting into this one was, I had saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel one time, because Sci-Fi at the time would play like Godzilla movies on a Saturday or something like that. And I caught the ending, probably 10 minutes of this movie on Sci-Fi. Wow. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to see this movie. So I didn't even know what the title was. All I knew is what Hedorah looked like. And I'm like, this is the only thing I have to go off of. So I was like looking at the titles at the video store, and I finally saw Godzilla versus Smog Monster. I'm like, that's it. That's it. That's the one. And took it home, rented it. I absolutely loved it. And I, many years later, when I was revisiting some of these, watched it again, and it was probably been another 10 years since I've seen it. And during this watch, and you know what, I was worried that it was going to be like, my adult sensibility was going to kick in. No, absolutely not. I still adore this movie.
No, it's a great watch. I had a good time, because going into it, I the only really prior knowledge I had on a lot of these movies is James Rolfe's Monster Madness, and I think I remember him not liking this one.
He did not like this one at all.
And so I went into this, and my expectations were pretty low. It's Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. What the heck is that? No, this one's a blast. It's one of the few Godzilla movies where I feel like it gets into the plot really quickly. No, this is the fun I wanted. This is the good time I needed from this after the last one.
Yeah, that's why I've been looking forward to this one, because I remember how much Destroy All Monsters and All Monsters Attack were such slogs to get through. That, like, oh man, like it's got to get better. And then when I saw which one was coming next, I'm like, all right, if I'm remembering this right, it's going to be a good time, and I think Nathan's going to enjoy this one too.
Yeah, I do have to announce though, I did watch it on my phone though.
What?
It looked great on my phone, but yes, that was my first time I watched a movie on my phone for this show. It was just a time constraint thing, but it worked.
Now let me ask you: did you know about some of the prior imagery that was in this movie? I'll get to the scene I'm talking about later, but
okay, then I'm not too sure, but I didn't know a lot of the imagery. I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's one very big infamous scene, and I was wondering if you knew about this before you watched it today.
I did not, and it was one of the best moments in cinematic history. So
perfect. Okay, well then that's going to be a great lead up to that point. So
you stay tuned.
But anyway, they worked on Godzilla versus Hedorah. This is kind of like Bono's baby. He had gotten another screenwriter to do it, and he kind of wrote this real hackneyed script. It looked awful, and so much so that Bono was just like, "This is terrible. Like, rewrite this whole thing." And he'd come in, make all these changes. He was a very involved director. He wanted things done in a very specific way, and Toho even gave him like very specific rules. Or like, it has to be cheap. You got this amount of days. We don't want any names in the movie, and gave him that set of rules. And after that, they kind of gave him the green light, because one thing I do appreciate about this movie is just how dark some of the scenes are. Just like they have no problem just being like showing some just like crazy stuff in here.
Yeah, there's definitely like a tonal whiplash sometimes in this. Like it's like sometimes a little comical, a little silly, but then it'll just be like super dark, which I mean, honestly, I don't mind all that much. But yeah, they are not afraid to show some brutal stuff.
And this movie, like the other couple of movies have been very firmly, this is a kids movie. Adults are not supposed to even go see these movies.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that had to do with Subaraya and him wanting the movie to be more kid friendly. And since Subaraya is now dead, they didn't have any kind of roadblocks doing that sort of thing. So when Hedorah comes on screen, Hedorah is this big blob of smog, pollution, sludge, whatever you want to call it. And he just does the most horrific things, because they find a little tadpole in the ocean. And
well, not a little tadpole.
it's big, but it looks real gross and everything. And they decide, oh, well, he must come from the ocean. Let's go check it out. And a scientist and his little boy, because the movie opens with a shot of me playing with my toys of Godzilla.
That was you pushing them down the slide.
Yeah.
That was something fun about this one, is that this kid loves Godzilla. They make Godzilla toys, and it's not like the last one. This one, it is pretty much confirmed that they exist in the same universe.
So it is very much that this Godzilla is a giant monster with its own toys.
I like that.
I will say, so the kid is pretty much the main star of this one too.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Very much toned down, and I think he's a lot more tolerable than Ichiro from the last one.
No, this kid is fine. And if anything, all the people are kind of toned down. They all have like distinct characters, but what I really liked about this one, coming from the last batch of movies, I feel like Godzilla really was the star of this one. Godzilla is in a lot of this movie, more than usual.
In terms of the Showa era, so the movies from the very beginning up until the 70s, this is the movie with the most Godzilla screen time.
Okay, that makes complete sense.
And I think that's why I love this movie so much, because I mean, there's some like Invasion of the Astro Monsters or some of them where it's just like Godzilla is on the screen for literally less than 10 minutes.
Yes.
And it's like, what, like this is supposed to be a Godzilla movie type of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
this one, it very much feels like a Godzilla movie. What I do like is that they like you said, it does treat Godzilla like a star. He's not a background character. He's not a supporting character, or this Deus ex machina character that comes in and saves the day type of thing.
Mm-hmm. No, he's like a very like integral like character. I mean, he's brought up a lot in this movie.
He's like Superman.
He's like Superman. Yeah, I like that. Don't they refer to him as Superman, the Superman monster, at some point?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so there we go. It's really cool because, like, I mean, he's heroic up to this point, but in this one, he really is playing that role up.
Well, so the very first shot of Godzilla, when they played this one musical score, which is
I liked it though. I don't know.
It's so goofy. It's like it's just funny. Like you hear it, you're used to the very usual like no 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 no, and then you get this score, and you're just like, all right, this is a different tone you're going for. That's for sure.
Yes.
It's a totally different way to do that. But they do start, like I said, Hedorah doing some very horrific things. When they tried going scuba diving for Hedorah, Hedorah like catches up. He almost kills the little boy, and then he almost kills the little boy's father and horrifically scars this man's face. It looks disgusting.
He actually scars multiple people's faces, but yeah, this guy looks like he's got like just a melted face and his eye is damaged. It's really gross because like the toxic smog breaks off sometimes and it gets on people, and the effects, it just like melts people almost, and they're not afraid to show what happens either.
No, it's very much so. Each movie, I think, tries to go for a different type of movie. Like we've seen one where they did the spy movie. We've seen one where they've done the alien invasion type of movie. This one is very much, I think, the closest thing to a horror movie of all the other ones.
I could see it. Yeah, definitely. It kind of has that horror movie feel. Like there's kind of a throwaway scene where like early in the movie where the smog monster gets like some of his goop thrown out and it gets thrown into like a mahjong room where people are playing mahjong, and it's a sea of dead bodies. Like everybody playing mahjong in there is dead. There's something out of a horror movie.
What I like about that scene is that it kind of subverts your expectations, where you think these guys, like, it's almost plays like comedic at first because the sludge comes in and they scream like, like, and you think they're just covered in sludge, like, oh, gross, I got all this crap all over me. But then it just pans over and all just dead.
Yeah. Pollution is not a joke. That's all I'm getting out of this.
Absolutely not. And this movie is also, like the one we talked about on Tuesday, very, very 70s.
Oh yeah, we were moving straight into the 70s, and I think that's great. We've both talked about how much we love that era of movies.
It's great. I mean, there's one scene where they go to a club, and it's super they just have this psychedelic imagery on the walls, and then there's one moment where all the dancers in there all have fish heads on, and the guy's like, huh, what?
I really like that. Oh, we didn't mention this has like a Bond opening theme type of deal. It does have a main theme song where the lady just starts naming off different pollutants, I guess.
Yeah, different elements. So
yeah, and I think that's getting sung in that scene as well.
This song constantly plays over and over and over again.
Yeah,
and it's I like the song.
It's fun.
I think it's good. Did you happen to listen to the English version of this song?
No, I did not.
So when they imported this movie over to America, because that's the version I am most familiar with, because that was my first time viewing it, is that they didn't change the movie all that much. I think they took out some of like the we'll get into that some animated sequences, but
Oh yeah.
the main thing they changed is they took the song and they translated it, and this one it's a give back the sun in Japanese, but in the American version it's save the earth, and it's the same one, save the earth, save the earth.
It sounds fun.
So it's sung the same way, but I really like the opening sequence though, and the song.
I do too. I like the colors, and it's like, the woman who's singing it front and center. I really like that. Who ends up being a character in the movie.
Yes. Well, in the club sequence, the other thing I wanted to mention is, so you mentioned the mahjong scene, but there's one scene in the club where all this sludge comes down the stairs, and they're like, "Oh no, it's going to get us!" But then it slides back up. But it turns out they slime this poor little cat.
I know. I felt so bad because the meow they use in the sound effect is like the saddest meow. And this cat's covered in goop, but not dead.
No, thank God. But I'm pretty sure they did kill some of these fish in the movie, but
I'm sure they did. I can see it. God,
wouldn't be the first time an animal died on a Godzilla set.
Yeah, no. But Hedorah here, I really I love its like destruction and its multiple forms, because it has like multiple forms. It has like a frog form, even though it doesn't really look like a frog, but that's kind of what it is. It hops around. But I really like its UFO form. I don't know if I'm talking about this too early, but I love seeing this dude fly around with like air propulsion jets, like bring him around the city.
That I do like that. This is the very first character that can change forms, and other than Mothra, of course, but this one has multiple different forms in the movie. And what I like too is that, again, they don't waste time with having these two monsters collide. Before, it's always like, oh, you got to save that till the last 5 minutes of the movie or whatever. This one, they are constantly fighting, and Godzilla has a very funny sequence where he picks Hedorah up by the tail and like throws him around like Mario did to Bowser in Super Mario 64.
Yeah, and
it says, "So long, gay Bowser."
Yeah, so long, gay Bowser. Yeah, and it's sped up. I really like that too. But the thing is Godzilla at the end. I mean, it's a good fight. I actually really like it. I think the fights in this one are really good, but Godzilla almost loses, and honestly, this sequence was horrifying, of him laying in the pit and like it's slowly filling up with sludge around him.
Yeah, well, so relating into that story is, of course, Nakajima is back as Godzilla, and this movie, with the death of Subaraya, Honda not working on these movies anymore, Nakajima, who we said was kind of like the person that was the glue that kept Godzilla together, now he's even starting to wane and not even wanting to be as involved, or as just getting really disinterested as Godzilla as a character. It wouldn't surprise me if something like what he's like, oh, let me just you have to go lay in a pit and get covered with sludge, and this Godzilla suit that weighs 200 pounds and probably feels like you're being suffocated, no big deal.
God, that sounds horrible.
But he's a trooper though. He's hanging on, and the suit actor that plays Hedorah, Kenpachiro Satsuma, and the unique thing about him is that he was a very young man. He actually, like reading David Callett's book, he was real excited to get offered a role for this movie.
Really?
And he's like, oh my gosh, I get to be in a movie. And then when they explained like, oh yeah, you're going to be in a big suit and no one's going to ever see your face. And when the direct quote was I was disappointed nonetheless.
Poor guy.
But this guy would end up having a very long career, because he is the Godzilla of the 80s and the 90s.
Oh, really? He's like the main Godzilla. Oh, that's cool. I like that. I did I did look him up really quickly, and I didn't realize he plays Pulgasari, the North Korean monster.
Ooh.
Which maybe one day
Hopefully,
we'll talk about.
hopefully he did it, but with his own choice.
Yeah, hopefully he wasn't kidnapped. They flew him out, and they're like, "Hey, come over, play Pulgasari."
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a very good moment. Like he gets thrown into the sludge, and then Hedorah kind of goes on a rampage throughout town, and
Yeah.
some of the most horrific scenes we've seen in a Godzilla movie, where he'll throw sludge onto people, and their whole skin and organs just disintegrate, and they're just skeletons. Or
yeah,
I mean, there's one scene where he just flies over a crowd of people, and they all just fall over dead.
yeah, like they can't breathe, they just die. It's really it's freaky. There's also something about the imagery of him, because at one point he just literally sucks smoke out of smokestacks. Like it's gross.
Well, since you brought that up, they do have a sequence kind of showing that there's these little odd animated intermissions sort of in the movie, kind of explaining what Hedorah's powers are.
Yeah.
What did you think of these animated sequences?
I liked them. They very much look like a 70s cartoon. They're a little out of place, but I think it adds it's what makes this movie interesting. It's what makes it different. There's just cartoons in the middle of it. It's kind of a weird little element of it.
I totally agree. Like I said, after the last couple of movies we've done of this, Godzilla really needed a shot in the arm, and this one is very much like kinetic energy, just constantly showing you stuff, taking different twists and turns.
Yeah.
And these little animated sequences they may be very much unnecessary when it comes to the plot, but as a viewer, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm digging this. This is something different.
Yeah, it's really just got a cool style. Late in the movie, there's a sequence I liked of a bunch of TV screens on screen, and it's multiple people talking about what's going on, and the colors shift and change as they're yelling. It was really
with the screaming baby that's almost like half of its body is in sludge.
Yes, yeah, it's wild. It's a whirlwind.
I feel like there's so many avenues I want to talk about with this movie, but I don't feel like I'm going to be able to get to. But
yeah,
it's one of my personal favorites. Like, because when we, I don't know, like Godzilla hasn't really been like super dominant in fights, and this one, it's like he finally gets a clear cut victory. Because they finally figure out that maybe if they shoot electricity at Hedorah, he'll kind of disintegrate. And this movie is very, very gross too.
Yeah, it is insane. It's like really disgusting without being like blood and guts disgusting, because he is a smog monster. He is filled with black goop, but it shoots out like blood, and it's like it is gross looking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Godzilla just at one point plunges like half of his arm inside of Hedorah, and it squirts out like blood, but it's all this black sludge. And Hedorah also has this sulfuric acid that he shoots out, and it hits Godzilla in the face, and it blinds Godzilla. Like Godzilla's face, like for the first time, is actually mutilated.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. Godzilla is actually scarred, and it's really gross looking. It's not really cheap. He's blinded in one eye, and he has like bloody scars on his face.
Yeah, it's a great moment. And this movie also has the scene too where he finally pins down Hedorah, and Godzilla plunges both of his hands inside of Hedorah and pulls out Hedorah's eyeballs.
Yeah. Oh my God. It is insane. Yeah. He like reaches in, and one at a time, he pulls them both out, and then he just crushes them. And it
crushes them to dust. Yeah.
Tarantino, what are you doing ripping off of this movie as well? God.
It is. It's great. It's one of my
Yeah, it is
favorite
great.
moments.
Yeah.
The other part too. So okay, I think this is a good part to talk about
Hmm.
the big scene. So Hedorah is not done yet. He flies away, and everyone's like, "Oh no, he's getting away. He's
Hmm.
flying." So Godzilla, who has never done this before, in any other movies, no indication that he could do this whatsoever.
No,
What I do like is that he poses like he's preparing for this whole moment, like
yeah.
he's like an Olympic gymnast.
I thought it was going to be like Naruto, like he was going to run at him because he kind of raises his arms up like he's about to run, but then he turns around. And what happens next is wonderful.
I want you to describe it.
Okay. Godzilla shoots flames out of his mouth and it propels him as he tucks his tail up under himself. And he propels himself in a way where he's flying completely backwards and can just fly through the air at a consistent speed, busting out laughing. It was an amazing moment.
I wish I was in the same room as you just to see
Yes,
your reaction.
it
Like,
was it was a great moment.
because I'm just imagining you're sitting there going like, what's he doing? Like, he's just gonna run at him, and then
That's
all of
what
a
I
sudden
thought.
you're like, what?
Yes, yeah. I was sitting and my fiance was near me and she was like, what has you laughing like that? She asked me why I was laughing so hard, and I had to show her, you gotta see this. Because it's insane. It is, you never would have thought Godzilla could do anything like this. And I once again adds to this movie's charm. It's like something like insane that he does in this movie.
Yeah, every now and then Godzilla busts out a very crazy moment, like we saw the one where he does the little dance
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So, but every now and then you get like a little gem like this one, and
Yeah.
I think for this movie though, it's not out of place.
No.
It works so well. It's it's such a comedic moment. I really do enjoy this, and they have really goofy music playing as he's flying,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
I think even that fits very well with that moment.
Yeah. It's really funny because this fight between the both of them goes on for a long time. It's a long fight. You think it's won, but then he then Hedorah like flies away, and then Godzilla catches up and is like, we're not done here. And he brings him all the way back to the electric field to finish him off. And it's a long kill scene.
It's how the movie ends is one of my favorite endings to a
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla movie. It's
Yeah.
probably is my favorite ending to a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
After he crashes into him by flying and brings him back, shocks him a little more, he
Mm-hmm.
has him to the ground, and the whole rest of the movie is just Godzilla ripping out Hedorah's guts, like just
Yes.
plunging his hands in there, getting a handful of muck and just throwing it aside,
Yeah.
just like garbage. Just,
Yeah. And while he's doing it, just black jets of liquid are just like funneling out of him and just ripping out. It's visceral. That's the word I'll use. It's very brutal. I was very surprised by it. It's neat. It's cool.
yeah, it's what a way to end a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And Godzilla very it has a very triumphant ending. Like I said, one of my favorites. Now, how did this movie perform is the big question.
Yeah. How did it perform? I gotta know.
It sold about 1.7 million tickets. So again, undergrossing what others had done in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
it had a cheap budget of 90 million yen, and it made 300 million yen.
Oh, yeah. That's a hit. That's a hit no matter what.
So I mean, decent numbers, not the monster hit like they wanted or like what they've gotten in the past. However, rumor has it that the producer of the movie, Tomoyuki Tanaka, went up to Bono after, because Tomoyuki Tanaka was actually hospitalized during a lot of this stuff.
Oh
So
wow.
he normally he's the one that kind of okays a lot of these decisions or creative decisions, and he wasn't there for a lot of the creative process. So Bono kind of had free range to do what he wanted, which is why there was a lot of these sequences in this movie. And Tanaka allegedly, this is a rumor, went up to Bono afterwards and said, "You ruined the Godzilla series."
Oh my God. That must be horrible to hear. Yeah.
But, I think he eventually came around. I mean, because Bono had been trying for years afterwards to make a Godzilla movie afterwards. And do you know what he wanted the sequel of this movie to be?
What?
He wanted Godzilla versus Hedorah in Africa.
In Africa?
Yeah.
Okay. The place Ernest went to?
That's right. A lot of other efforts. He had other ideas. He wanted Godzilla to fight a giant starfish.
Oh wow. Oh my God. I kind of wish this happened.
I know. It makes me, because this is his only Godzilla movie, and it makes me think like, man, I really wish they would have gotten him around again.
Yeah, at least like a couple more movies from him, like just to see what he brought to it. But like you said, I'm sure if Tanaka there didn't like it, and it seems like modern consensus a lot, like you said, people don't like it. So maybe it's like kind of I don't know, maybe people don't like it. I guess I could kind of get it. It is very goofy. It has its goofy moments, but I really do think it's a blast.
It is. It's a great time for me, and I have immense fun watching it. Like I was saying before, though, Bono was still greatly involved in the Godzilla series, and he even wrote a book called "The Man That Made Godzilla Fly."
I like that.
He'd been trying forever to get another Godzilla movie launched off the ground, and he was wanting to make a 3D Godzilla movie.
Oh, cool.
In the 2000s, but he could never find funding. And he got some American studios involved. But the American studio was like, we don't want to do a 3D short film. We want to do our own Godzilla feature-length movie. So they actually bought the rights from Toho, again, from Bono, to be able to do this. And that's why Bono has producer credit on the three Godzilla American, the three most recent Godzilla American movies.
Yeah. Well, didn't a new Godzilla movie get announced in that line? Like they released the title of it today, I believe.
That's correct.
Of recording, King Kong X Godzilla. So, because that's different than King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah, well, Godzilla better be kicking King Kong's butt in this one too.
I'm rooting King Kong all the way. Let's keep it going.
Don't you dare.
I'm gonna be at the drive-in yelling King Kong, King Kong.
I'll be honking my horn. Godzilla. Godzilla.
We'll just have to see. We'll have to see what happens.
But yeah, I mean, so as a film series, Godzilla is the best movie. It's the most well-made. Yeah. It's the most well-made movie. It's on a completely other tier. However, for my money, in terms of Godzilla sequels and things like that, this one is my favorite.
I think, like you said, the film, the first one, Godzilla, is a masterpiece. It's a great movie, but this and Ebra, which is funny to say, run a close, tight race for me for like favorites of the other movies in the franchise.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about it before, but once we hit the end of the 70s run of Godzilla, which we're getting there. I mean, probably by the end of the year,
it's going to be sad.
It will be.
Yeah.
But like I said, for the James Bond episode, we'll probably have to do a special episode where maybe one that's not Patreon or whatever. I don't know, where we can actually do like a proper retrospective of the series.
I think that would be good. Yeah.
Then we can actually give you our very definitive rankings of the series. But honestly, I mean, there's not really much you need to know about this movie priorhand. I mean, if you know who Godzilla is, you're good. I mean, so I highly recommend
Yeah.
seeing this one. It for me, it's great fun. It's not boring. It has a lot of great sequences. It is very much what I want from a kaiju movie, where there's a human plot line that doesn't overstay its welcome or be boring with boring characters. It has, there's plenty of monster action, a lot of interesting sequences in this movie too that keep your attention. It's a great time for me.
I totally agree. I think this is a really great stop. If you want to get into Godzilla movies and you just watch the original, this would be another really good entry for that. Go in with an open mind, have fun with it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's going to do it. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that about wraps it up for this one.
All right. Well, we're going to shut the book on Toho right now.
Yeah.
But Nathan, what are we going to be doing next time?
All right. Well, next week on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about 1989's Gleaming the Cube, which is streaming over on Amazon Prime.
Sounds great. Cannot wait. But if you have any thoughts, opinions on the podcast, please email us over at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod. And once again, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturepodcast. But until next time.
Until next time.